Hello everybody, welcome to this edition of What to Watch with Your Popcorn, where we review movies that are out on DVD and we tell you whether it's worth watching or not. I am Rob.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're reviewing Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, the movie that put Tarantino on the map as a director. And of course he went on to make films like Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill and Jackie Brown and recently Inglourious Basterds. But I think this was his first film that he directed, or at least the first one that got, a big, somewhat of a release, and it's developed a very cult following. And for those of you that don't know the plot of the movie, it's about a group of criminals are gathered together for a diamond robbery, and the movie focuses on the beginning of it and the aftermath. So doing it that way was kind of interesting, Dave, because usually with a heist movie you see the heist, but here you just rely on the actor's dialogue explaining what happened. And sometimes there's conflicting information from the characters, but you get to use your imagination about what went on and what do you think happened. So I think that's why Tarantino did it. You told me this was the first time you saw Reservoir Dogs. What was your reaction to it?
It's in some ways it's like I was laughing. In some ways, I mean, it was wrong to laugh because it's horrible what goes on in this movie. But but in some cases it's just funny. I mean, there's, with all the swearing in this movie, it's over the top, kind of. But yeah, it's
Tarantino style, though.
Yeah, it's his style, because all his movies are like that.
Yeah. This is my second time seeing this movie, and for me, one of the strong points for me was the dialogue with this movie, especially the opening scene at the restaurant before they do the diamond robbery, where they're sitting around at a table and they're talking about, Madonna's songs, and Joe Tierney plays Joe, who's heading the operation. He's trying to remember a girl's name, and of course there's the famous tip speech from Steve Buscemi. It's very interesting dialogue. The dialogue kind of reminded me of Goodfellas because the characters, I just had an interest in what they were saying. I found them to be, eavesdropping on their conversations.
Yeah, the first scene is like the funniest of all, basically, when he's talking about Madonna's song "Like a Virgin" and what he's saying makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and then Buscemi gets into the thing where he doesn't tip and all that because he's cheap and.
Yeah, well, he doesn't really trust anybody. He's not he doesn't trust the government or nothing. But for me, the disadvantage with the dialogue is, I've got nothing against swear words, but the thing is, I think they use the word fuck a lot in this movie.
Yeah, they use it as a crutch.
I think after a while it feels kind of forced. I mean, if you look at, I hate to compare this to Goodfellas, but with Goodfellas, whenever a character says fuck, it usually feels like that's something their character would say,
Yeah.
They don't use it too often. I mean, here when Lawrence Tierney's character Joe says fuck, it sounds like something he would say, but after a while, there's a scene where Harvey Keitel's Mr. White and Steve Buscemi's Mr. Pink are yelling at each other because they can't figure out why, the robbery went down. It seems like they say fuck every other word, and after a while it just felt forced to me, and I felt like it was just, they were saying it just to say it. I think after a while it felt like it got overused, but other than that, I think what really helped with the movie is that the characters are very, very strong for the most part. Most of the lead characters are strong with distinct personalities.
Right.
Like I said, Mr. Pink, he's played by Steve Buscemi. He doesn't trust anybody, and then Mr. White, played by Harvey Keitel, is more like a father figure to Mr. Orange, who's kind of new. And, it seemed like, we've got very strong characters here, and I think that really helped make the movie.
Yeah. They all play like a totally different role in the whole thing, but it all fits together. Yeah, one way or the other.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, Mr. Blonde by James Madison, I think his name was. He's calm when everybody's freaking about how the robbery went down. He's the only one that remains calm throughout the movie. So I think it was good. I mean, the casting was perfect. Quentin Tarantino, I read he wanted to play Mr. Pink, but I think that would have been wrong. No, Steve Buscemi was perfect as the untrustworthy Mr. Pink, I think. But Quentin Tarantino does appear in this movie. He's Mr. Brown.
Yeah, but he's not in there long enough, and I felt that maybe his character was kind of wasted because he's only in two scenes. One of the flashback scenes when beforehand, what they're showing days before, and then he's in the very beginning at the restaurant in that scene around the table.
Well, more than a couple of that, they show he's in the aftermath of the robbery too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he's to me he's not quite as a good actor as some of the rest of the cast, like Harvey Keitel and all that. But I think for that character, he was fine. The character that I would have liked to have gotten known a little bit more was Mr. Blue. He's played by a crime writer. I forgot his name, but we don't really get to know him or see him too much either in this movie. But like I said, I like that the movie recreated the robbery through the dialogue, and it was different for me. I think this was a good starting point for Tarantino, but I think he's gone on to make much better movies. Like the scene where they're yelling at each other, I thought got out of hand, and I think in later films he was able to control it much better, like in Kill Bill, which I think is the best film, and recently in Inglourious Basterds, he uses much calmer stuff, like the first scene with Christoph Waltz, where he's talking to someone that might be holding Jews in the basement of his house. Right. You know, create tension that way. I think he's grown a little bit more as a filmmaker and all that stuff. It's not my favorite movie of his, but it's a good starting point. I would probably recommend it.
Yeah, I'd definitely recommend it. The sets in this movie were really good, especially like when they're in the warehouse, how they made that look like it was like a chemical warehouse or something, and I guess they had like stolen or botched items in there, because you could see like cars covered up that were like, but you kind of like wonder where did those come from and all that.
Well, here's something interesting. That building used to be I guess an old mortuary, because, you know, this was a low-budget movie. They couldn't afford to build sets. That's why this movie was shot on location and in this building. That car that's covered up was actually, I believe, a funeral car. Yeah, you know, that's
yeah, it did kind of look like a hearse, but yeah, it was the typical like cheesy low-grade sets that Tarantino is into using in most of his movies, except for maybe like Inglourious Basterds. That's the one where he probably spent the most money and made like really good-looking sets.
Well, but the film that influenced him are films like that were like low-budget movies. Like there's a special feature section where he talks about Roger Corman, who made movies on low budgets and the exploitation films from the 70s. So those played a role in influencing his film work. I definitely would recommend checking out Reservoir Dogs. I think it's a good starting point for Tarantino and for anyone interested in seeing his movies. But I think over time he got much better, of course.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to recommend this movie to watch with your popcorn. Also, it's a good starting movie, like you said. It's like, and I was like I was always afraid to like watch this movie to begin with, because like so many people gave it so many mixed reviews and said that it was like really like over the top, like bloody gory, and it wasn't too bad, actually.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of those scenes take place out of camera range, like the famous ear scene. You see the scene where the guy's about to cut the guys off, and the camera kind of pans away, and then the guy walks in with the ear in his hands. A lot of the scenes you don't really see them actually doing yet. You know, it's like you see what happens afterwards. They kind of leave it to your imagination, which might have been made it. Why people might say it's a bit violent, because they could imagine what was going on.
Yeah, and it's not even like real. It's not realistic either, because like. The one guy, he's like laying there like bleeding for hours, and he's like almost like totally fine. He's still like functionable, and he's still coherent and everything.
Yeah, he would have been dead by then. Yeah, I know. But what can you do?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that's it for our review of Reservoir Dogs. So leave your comments about the video or about the movie if you have seen it. And thank you very much for watching. See you next time.